Hey guys, and welcome back to episode 10 of the Developers Unplugged podcast. Today we've got Rajesh. Thank you very much for joining us, Rajesh. For, I guess, people that don't know who you are, do you mind giving a bit of a run through a bit of an introduction?
Yeah, cool. Hey, Harry. So I'm Raj. I've been a software engineer for the last 12 plus years. I've worked at the UK, now in Germany for the last 8 years, but I'm from India. That's where I was born. So I've been a software engineer for the last 12 plus years. I'm also a tech lead for the last 6 plus years, I would say. So I work mainly on TypeScript ecosystem. Now also dabbling with all the language models and stuff. So I work for a company called Trade AI as an engineering lead. That's pretty much about me.
Cool, thanks a lot. Nice and straight to the point there. So you mentioned that because, of course, you're based in Berlin, aren't you?
Right.
You have been for, is it sort of 6 years that you've been in Berlin?
Yeah. I've been here for the last 7.5 years. Yeah.
Cool. And so prior to Berlin, then, did you say that you was working in London?
Yeah, right, yeah.
So take me back to that, because that'll be quite interesting already.
I mean,
what was the reason?
I think don't want to go into too much details because so I worked in East London for a bit, and then at the time Brexit happened, and then I was like, all right, cool. So maybe this is a time for me to move to Germany, or not Germany per se. I had plans to move to the EU, and I applied for some jobs in Germany, and I got my first job offer from a small startup in Berlin. And I just looked up, let's say, Berlin, and then, all right, just pack my bags and move to Berlin and see what it takes me. Yeah, so I've been in Germany for the last 7.5 years. I would say it's going to be 8 years in about 3 months. I think the work culture is pretty laid back. In Germany, I really like the work culture in Germany. So let's leave it at that. Don't want to compare these two cultures that just have a more of a don't want to maybe compare these two cultures, but then I really like both for their own things. Yeah,
they got a lot of similarities, haven't
right.
they? Like London, Berlin,
Yeah,
maybe being the weather, maybe. It's
right.
very cold. And there's like 2 days of sunshine per year. They're very similar, aren't they? Especially like software engineering, the communities in each. And I know that they kind of like cross over as well. And there's quite each other from each cities and stuff like that, which is really cool. But did you expect that you would be here now, like for so long, like 7 or 8 years? Or did you think like be in Berlin for a few years? Like, was there any massive surprises? Like, what's kind of kept you to stay here for so long?
Yeah, I think at least for the first few years, it was more of personal reasons, for me to stay in Berlin, because I think it was more of, personal reasons that I don't want to get into. I mean, it was more of, partnerships with other people, this and that. And then later it was more of, all right, I have a nice apartment, things are smooth. I think the pay is not bad. The work culture is actually okay. I've learned the language. So I just invested a bit more time in Germany, right? So when you learn language and then just, get a new apartment, that's really hard to get. Then, things just flow a bit easy. And then 3 years down the line, oh, okay, so, I've just lived there for I've just lived there for 3 years. All right, let's do another 2. And then 5 years, and then they slap a passport on your, the palms, and say, hey, take it, stay for longer, pay more taxes. All right, why not? So that's I think that's how I can just let's say explain how I've just stayed in this place for so long, but no big reason, I would say. I really like the work culture. It's a bit laid back. Maybe that's good and that's also bad, in some ways. But
yeah, it's quite nice though, isn't it? Because it's something that's happened quite naturally. Like you kind of look back and after each like couple of years, you're like, oh, I'll go for a couple more years, and then 2 years turn into now nearly 8 years or whatever, So
Yeah.
it is quite incredible. And I noticed as well, you said that you've been, of course, working in software development. You said for 12 years, right, at the start. And for half of that, most recently for the last 6 years, you've been working more in like a leadership position. So
Right.
how was that transition from working 6 years as an individual contributor to then taking that first step up into leadership position? Was it quite a difficult transition?
Um, I mean, not quite, I would say, because I think I've always been more of a tech lead, right? Let's say I'm not this pure people management guy. So rather, I just work with team, and then we build tech together. That was the goal. So, and I'm also a bit more hands-on with things, so that made it a bit easy for me to connect with the people, right? Let's say the main challenge with regards to to be more of a manager is basically when there is a disconnect between the tech and the person, right? Let's say if you are just a people manager, you're probably not going to know what's happening in your team. That's bad. But as long as you're really close to tech and you like working with people, I think you can make a great tech lead. The main challenge is basically just to understand the strength of a team. For example, when people just hand over, when you just get a team, from someone else, or maybe just you are building a new team. The main challenge is basically just to understand, all right, so who can do what in this team?
Yeah.
And how effectively we can all work together to solve a certain problem. Because sometimes you can do some things way faster than a team member, right? But then that's not scalable. That doesn't scale beyond one person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just to have this mindset of, all right, we have to scale the team. So that means even though I may not like certain things to be, even though I may not like to do, even though I may like to do certain things, I should not do them. I should rather delegate to this person. I think you need to have that mindset to scale a team. I think as long as you have that and you can work with people, you can tolerate people, I think it's going to be fine. Yeah.
I think there's interesting you said there about like you're quite a hands-on leader as well. Do you think that it's essential to still be hands-on and be an engineering manager? Because that's a very controversial topic.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. At least, that's my hot take. You have to be hands-on to be an effective tech lead. I think even Elon Musk says that, right? Let's say you have to know about the things that you work on. I mean, I think that doesn't really work for all the fields, but especially for tech, I think it does apply, because you have to actively work on certain things, or at least know certain things in a team, so that you can answer certain tech things that can, I don't know, come up, right? Let's say you are a tech lead, another person comes to the company, they just ask, hey, what does this service do? And if you can't really answer it, from the top of your mind, I think that's kind of more of a problematic, I don't know, scenario where the team wouldn't really trust you, right?
Yeah.
So, that's at least my take on this thing, right? Let's say the tech lead should probably be among the top 3 devs in a team, right? Yeah. I mean, maybe not the top, right? There are some crack devs who are just, the cream of the crop. But then you don't really have to be the cream of the crop. Rather, just you can aspire to be one of the top devs in your team. Yeah.
Interesting you say that. Very, very interesting. I think it comes down to like the perception of your team to you as well. It's like do you think that engineers question the credibility of a leader if they can't write code anymore?
Absolutely. Not all of them. Maybe about 60% of them would not really trust you, or they wouldn't really, trust you with, I don't know, challenges that they're facing, right? They are trying to work on a problem, you're a non-tech guy, or maybe you're not, you are a tech lead who is not, who doesn't really understand tech as much, then you wouldn't really know what the problem really is and why it's taking that person so long. And you wouldn't really know how to help them out, right? So, for example, let's say someone's trying to work on, trying to work on, let's say, I don't know, deploying a service on AWS. And then you have no clue, let's say, what AWS is, and you don't really know what are the challenges, or maybe at least the name of the service that the person is trying to deploy, right? Then you're
Yeah.
really out of touch with this whole ecosystem, right? And then you would rather expect the person to do the work a bit faster, not knowing what the challenges that they may face in this, specific area. Yeah.
Interesting. I suppose that this is more essential for smaller teams, startups, but when it comes to like big teams as well, huge engineering teams, maybe 20 plus engineers, all different teams and whatnot, and you're like the head of engineering for that company that got all these engineers. Is it still essential, or is it like is it dependent on the size here? Because surely you can't be managing all these people whilst writing code, right?
Yeah, true. I think that you're allowed to be, let's say, hands off, but then you still have to be on top of the architecture of the whole company, right? So you need to know what are the pain points, or where the architecture is likely to fail the most. It's like which part of the architecture, or maybe single points of failure, right? Let's say if you're just working on, like a huge under backend system, or let's say ChatGPT, right? Let's say you most likely should know that you have a huge backend queue where all the requests come in, and then that's most likely, your single point of failure, right? If it fails, then things just get accumulate, things just, accumulate in the queue, and then it's not going to go forward, from there. I think these things you have to be a bit more aware, a bit more aware of the architecture of your whole backend system that you're actually trying to work with, or at least you should have worked with at least some of the services that you use right now in the past. That's my take.
Interesting. So you still need to have an element of
exactly, yeah. So you can't be a non-techie, trying to do, the job of a, I don't know, head of engineering of a huge company. I mean, it doesn't really work like that. Yeah.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. And so with leadership as well, of course, it's really important to not only be involved within the tech side of things and actually be ideally a software engineer migrating into a tech lead like yourself to be a good leader, fully understand some of the pain that they're going through. But what's your thoughts on also leading remotely as well? Because that can be challenging for everybody, can't it?
Yeah, that's true. I think at least there is a vibe shift in the last couple of days, where people expect people to come in office, just come to office and work from there, especially the startups, right? But I think once there is enough trust, I think you can build more of a distributed team across the world. But I think it depends on the culture that you're trying to build in the company, right?
Yeah.
So some companies just don't have the culture to work from home, right? So I've actually worked with a company and a team I've just built, and we worked, from across the globe, in the past. So, or at least in the same, at least in the same time zone. I think it depends how open the company is to adopting a certain culture, plus how far they go, go in order to establish this culture, so that everyone's on board, like, hey, that's how we work. For example, if you're just working from home, you have to be online, be available, be reachable, update your calendar, email the person, I don't know, available for Slack. if someone slacks you, you can't, let's say, answer them, you know, I don't know, 30 minutes later or so. So these things, right? Just to have, you need to have some rules laid for the whole team. Let's say how we work. That's the name of the document that we like to. That's the name of the document that I actually had, in the past. Is like how we work, right? So when someone onboards into the team, they completely understand. All right, so this team works from across the globe, or maybe works from a few parts of the world. That's how they work. That's how you answer emails. That's the time you need to take to let's say answer someone, right? So these things. I think it's more of trying to build a culture around this than yeah. I think that's the main problem. Just to build a culture around this is the most challenging part. I think if you have a strong culture that can work from any place, or maybe from they can work from any part of the world, I think it will work. Yeah.
Interesting. So that was done successfully, wasn't it? Your team?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Successfully.
I've actually worked with 2 teams before where it actually worked really well for us. Yeah.
I know you mentioned some great points there. I think one of the key ones is really mapping out from the very beginning how it works, the non-negotiables, I suppose, to be available. Like you can't just reply at the end of the day to a Slack message.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, right? But does it also come down to like the onboarding as well? Because that must be so different to like in-person onboarding, because in-person onboarding, you almost don't need to teach them about the culture because they sit in the office and they just look around and they are the culture, Whereas from remote, you almost have to do more. So what does that onboarding process look like if you was to hire an engineer in your team and it's like fully remote and there was maybe outside of Germany, but in the same time zone?
Yeah, right. I think for that, for the first 3 weeks, right? Let's say you do have some time. You just give them some free time to read all the docs, and then maybe come back to you. And then maybe what worked for us is basically just you get the person, to set up the dev environment. So that's the bare minimum that they need to work on the code base. After that's done, you give them a task to do, right? And they learn by doing, right? It's first they need to break down the task and then understand, all right, so whom do I reach? And that is documented in a place that they just go check out the documentation. Okay, whom do I reach for this, specific code base? And then they reach out to the person. And yeah, so the whole team is like available for this new person to onboard and do their task, for the first 3 weeks. So that gives them confidence. Hey, okay, so I've just done a task, in about 3 days, right? And then once that gives them more confidence, to take up more tasks. I think that's the approach that has actually worked in the past, where yes, you can't really meet the person in person, right? But then you can still effectively have more of a culture, or maybe a step, or maybe first few weeks, right? So what does a person do in the first 3 weeks? More of expectation management from day one. Hey, in the next 3 weeks, you're going to work on a task after you onboard, and then have your dev environment in place, and then you're going to use all the resources that you have in the team to reach this goal, where you would just do 2 tasks for us. Yeah, so that's more of my style of onboarding. It's basically you learn by doing. Yeah.
Interesting. So you almost like trying to prompt them to be proactive, to do it, to learn things themselves, rather than you just telling them, hey, this is what you do. You're kind of like, this is the task, now do.
Yeah, exactly. And basically you also give them all the resources that they need, right? I'm a huge fan of documentation, right? Let's say everyone should be able to read a document and then try and understand what needs to be done. Let's say, I think I'm huge into that. So the person on board, if they take a look at a code base, they go to the documentation just to read and understand. If they can't, they reach out to the person at the end of the doc and they talk to them, get shit done. Yeah. So that's how I would, let's say, that's how I would, kind of build a framework for the people to, like, let's say, onboard a bit faster, and then just be a bit more be a bit more proactive in terms of, trying to pick up work and trying to get shit done really quick. Yeah.
Because that's like something you can't really teach, isn't it? Somebody that's just proactive,
right? Yeah.
Solve the problem. Because I think that again, this is going to sound controversial, maybe, but why not? But I do think that there are some personalities that really thrive at home because people will just get on with doing what they're going to do, and there's no distractions, and they're even more productive.
Right.
And then there are some personalities that do not, and they prefer to be around other people. Maybe they don't realize that.
Yeah, true.
But it's always a little bit of a back and forth. But it's good to know that you've kind of done it and it's been successful, not just now, and it's not like a fluke or a one-off. It's actually happened multiple times now, so it's clearly working. I wanted to also talk about AI. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I'm going to say I need to explain it to you first. How is AI changing software development for you, in your opinion, and what do you think the next 5 years looks like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've been answering this for the last 3 years. Now, I think especially in 2024, things just changed massively. Because I know I've been working with Cursor for the last 1 year, and then I can clearly see, maybe more than 1 year. I can clearly see how far they've come. So what Cursor did was basically they just built a framework to work with any language model. So at first, yes, the framework was in place, but then the language model was actually dumb. Right now, the language model they've gotten really smart. Now the framework seems to be working really well. Right, so that's where we are at right now. And I've been using agents for all my work, and it's amazing, right? It does practically everything that I ask it to do. But the problem is, you have to sacrifice. You have to be careful there, right? So when you work with the language models, you have to sacrifice speed for understanding, and you have to sacrifice understanding for speed. So what do I mean by that? You could technically just tell AI to do certain things for you, and then it will just get to work. But the code base might just get ugly, right? So you just come back after 3 months, and then this, it's like a huge blob of I don't know, moving, like the slimy code base that's so ugly, and that just AI just, I don't know, taking charge, right? And the problem is you might not understand your own code base if you just let AI do everything, right? So you have to be really careful there, where if you at some point have to work on a certain feature, right? But if you're on train and there is no internet, right, let's say, and if you just don't know your own code base, man, that's sad, right? So you have to have this balance where you stay on top of the architecture. So what I like to do is basically I just build a framework first, and then build more of an instruction set based on the framework of the code base that I've just built. Hey, for this tech, we use this. For this part, we use this tech. For this part, we use this tech. And this is how I code and all that stuff. And then I let AI do the work. And then AI knows, all right, so this is how this guy works. So I'm actually going to do it this way. So when I come back to my code base, I can at least make sense of what the code is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's how I work with AI on a day-to-day basis, right? let's say a bit more careful, really optimistic, but also really, careful, right? Next 5 years, I think we will probably have, so we will probably not need as many software engineers, but then the jobs will still be alive, right? So it's like, do you need as many farmers that you need, do you need as many farmers that you required back in 1970? Probably not, but all the farmers who work right now know, they know how to operate a tractor. They probably know, how to work with some tools, right? So maybe that's kind of the future that I see for software engineers, where you may not need you know, you may not need as many engineers as you need right now. But then in the next 5 years, you may need less engineers, but then those less engineers will be really, really competent, right? It's they probably should know how to use some 10 different tools and work with some, 10 different language models. Yeah, so that's how I see it. Yeah, so I think the barrier to entry to build software has gone really, really, really low, right? Let's say, it's gone down way, it's gone down so much. Like any Tom, Dick, and Harry, I mean, including you, Harry, can build an app, right? Let's say you can just prompt, right? Let's say, hey, make me YouTube, right? I mean, of course, it's not going to do the same thing, but then it would just at least, give you some slop that looks like YouTube, right? And if you want to start up, get some, I don't know, funding, and you are a guy who is a smooth talk, you are a guy who can talk smooth to all the investors, and then they want something that can, that they can click and operate, easy to build, right? So you don't need like like two software engineers to work for about a month to do it for you. So it's like an interesting time, and software is going to get more sloppy, but that is the future.
Yeah, it feels like we're in like a transitional time at the moment, doesn't it? Like it feels like we're really, really transitioning. There's some people that are kind of way ahead in the future with it already, and they're like experts within large language models. I think there's some software engineers as well that are just like kind of trying to block it out, stick to what they know, PHP, whatever it is, and that's it. But what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe working as more of like a junior software engineer now? Because I suppose there's probably quite a lot of job insecurity around them and how they are. They're still trying to learn and certainly not kind of found their feet yet. What kind of advice would you give to these people that have got less than 2 years?
I think the same advice that I just gave right now for, let's say, myself, right? Let's say what happens in the next 5 years. Let's say 5 years from now, we have few engineers who really can work with tools, right? Let's say they can work with so many tools at the same time. I think that's the same advice. If you're young, you are starting to build a pathway for you to become a software engineer for the last, for the next 10 years. You have to be able to work with as many tools as possible to maximize your ROI, with regards to how you code, right? Yeah, so now it's just all about trying to work with tools, plus also understanding, the language. Let's say pick a language, that you really like, and also the AI likes, right? Maybe TypeScript or maybe Python. So these languages are actually really good. And then just, I don't know, double down, learn to work with as many tools as possible, build your workflows. For some people still come to me and tell me that they don't really work with Cursor. And I'm like, bro, this is the easiest shit that you can do, right? I think just invest a bit more time and don't be, is there a word for it where people, think that it's not going to work. What is the word? It is not the doomer, right? When you call someone doomer, it's basically the person thinks that it's just gonna, destroy everything. It's like what do you call that? It's like some people are just a bit skeptics. They think that it's not gonna.
Like a pessimistic approach?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So some people just, try to be a skeptic for life, right? They just, that's that's all they do, right? Let's say being skeptical of everything, that's AI. And if you're someone who's junior, I mean, you can't afford to be a skeptic, mate, because you have to learn everything. It's going to get rough in the next 5 years for all software engineers, but the best ones, will survive. Yeah.
Especially the ones that like embrace the change, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Embrace, adapt, and overcome. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
The 3 words. Wonderful. And just one last thing as well, because I know we've covered quite a lot here, but in terms of hiring as well, just kind of bringing it back to yourself, and of course you've been in a hiring position now for the last 6 years, especially as a tech lead. What are some of the kind of attributes away from like the technical ability, but what's like some of the attributes that you look for when it comes to speaking to somebody in an interview, for example?
Yeah. So I just look for 2 things. So the first thing is basically, do you have some tech knowledge, right? Let's say, just talk to the person, does the person fit the role, and how much of a tech understanding they have, they have on a certain topic, right? Let's say if you call yourself an expert, you have to understand how that works, right? You can't just really call yourself an expert on the CV and then not answer certain things. Yeah, of course, that goes without saying. That the next thing that I look for is basically, can this person work in a team? Now that's the most important thing for me in terms of let's say off tech. What comes off tech? Can this person work in a team? Because team is, to work or to hire someone more for an IC role is actually pretty easy if there is no team, right? Let's say some people just do a certain, you give them a certain task and they will just do it. But then when you work with a team moves obviously slightly slower than a single person for a single task, but then we move faster for a bigger task if the team is a bit aligned, right? I think that's another attribute that I look for in a person if I'm trying to hire the person, is like, can this person work in a team? The way they talk, the way can they say, I don't know, let's learn together, or maybe let's do together, or can they pair program, right? So it's like how opinionated, it's like how opinionated or this, is this person? Are they super opinionated about certain topics? And that's often really bad. Sure, they might be skillful, they might be skillful in a certain area, but then if they're super opinionated about certain thing, and if the team disagrees with them, there's going to be a conflict, So that's kind of it's more of a balance, right? Let's say you have to hire someone smart, also opinionated in certain topics that they're really confident of, and also flexible in topics that they have less experience in.
Interesting. Very interesting. I heard somebody say something very serious, basically the same thing as you. And there was a founder in Berlin, of course, and they've hired like the entire engineering team. They're also CTO, and they have a really great culture. They have like outstanding retention. People are very happy, and they don't get paid like loads and loads of money. Like it's quite normal salaries for Berlin, So I kind of asked what it was and how they kind of found these people and how they all work so well together. And the CTO just said that it was because he just looks for people that are easy to get along with and easy to work with. And it was like, you can't measure it. There's no like metric, you just have to speak to them. The team has to speak to them. and we just have to ask him a few questions. But really, it just comes down to like, can I work with this person? It's like something he asks himself every single time before he makes them an offer. It's like, would I like to work with this person? Like, could I spend 8 or 9 hours of my day, 5 days per week for like years working with this person, you know? And so being genuinely enjoyable and like actually being open to other people's ideas and opinions, it's quite rare, isn't it, to find software engineers that are like that. But when you do find software engineers that are like that, they usually are a really great asset to the team, right?
Right.
Would you say it was like a cultural thing over technical ability? So their personality over technical ability. Do you sort of share that mindset as well?
I think it's more of a balance, right? Let's say, I mean, we can't just really have someone sweet talking to you and then not get work done, right? Let's say,
Yeah.
I mean, that's also bad, but it depends on the team. Let's say if the role if the role entails more of trying to working with people, and then I don't know, if I'm hiring more of a staff engineer whose job is to try to bring the team up to speed with certain topics and then trying to teach them, you know, all the things that they have to know, then obviously this person has to be um, a bit more approachable for the whole team, right? If this person is a bit, I don't know, a really non-approachable person, then that's really bad for the team. So I think it changes from, you know, the role to a role. You know, if you're just looking for you know, like an IC just taking up an epic and then, you know, trying to work on it, then sure, you know, that person doesn't really have to be, you know, they don't really have to be social. But then if the role requires you to be more people friendly, right? So you have to be people friendly. Yeah.
Interesting. So you have to just kind of judge what the responsibilities are,
right? Yeah.
And pull from there. Yeah, interesting. One last question. I feel like I said one last question like 10 minutes ago. There's just one last question as well, because I know that there's quite a few engineers at the moment that keep asking me, and they ask many people as well, like many of my colleagues that also, of course, work within recruitment in different areas around Germany. And they ask me a lot about like CVs, like what's the best way to make it stand out. And do you know what? As much as I don't think the CV is like the most important thing, I will admit that unfortunately, even in 2025, it is still really important to get conversations started.
Right.
So what's your sort of opinions on like how to create a really killer CV just as a software engineer? Like what would get your attention?
Right. Yeah. I think I mean, as more of a tech guy, I mean, I look at what they have done, right? Let's say what have you done in the past? Let's say, can I see your code base? I would rather just look at the top of the CV if they have got some links for some, I don't know, open source gigs that they've just done, and I can just check them out, and also just look at the code base just to see if, hey, you know, have they done something cool? You know, have they built something really cool, right? So if they have some links to their work, that's great. You know, that's the first thing that I look for as a tech guy. But maybe, you know, the CV can land on someone who's non-tech, right? So in that case, then your CV needs to be 2 pages max, not more than 2 pages, you know, maybe 3 if, you know, you have more experience. If you've got under 5 years of experience, it has to be just, I don't know, 2 pages, not more. And what I like to see is basically what have they solved in their work with the metric, right? Let's say, what work have you done with a number? For example, I worked for this client and I decreased, you know, the document processing time by 10% or maybe 20% by using this tech, right? So that would make me, all right, so this guy used this tech to do this. All right, he's probably telling the truth, because this tech is used for, you know, document processing, and I know that. Plus, they've done this, so it makes sense, right? So that would be a good way to tell a story on your CV. with the things that you've actually done. Yeah.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Like I said, I think I'm so aligned as well with the shorter the better.
Yeah.
I see hundreds of CVs. I'm sure you do as well when you're hiring, and to kind of go through them all, probably spending less than a minute on everyone, which sounds horrible, but it's the truth, right? It's just kind of spending less than a minute on each one.
Right.
It's not the best. So to try and keep it as short, snappy as possible, key achievements in there, I completely agree. You also, one of the things I noticed is like a lot of software engineers, they'll say like the team did this, like, oh, I was part of a team that, raised funding and went through Series A round of funding. But then it's like, that's not something that you've done, that's amazing.
Right. Yeah.
It's great that you've had that experience to be a part of that. But it's like, talk about something that you did that maybe contributed to that, rather than just saying Series A. So I would always say, like yourself, like be really specific. If you reduce time, talk about metrics, percentages, stuff like that as well. It just goes a really long way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Last question. No, I'm joking. No, that was all. Look, Rajesh, thank you so much. Seriously, it's been brilliant chat. I can't believe the time. I can't believe it's like been more than 45 minutes that we've been speaking, but thank you so much. Really enjoyed having you on, and you've also got a YouTube channel as well, right?
Yeah, I've got my YouTube channel, but then the problem is I haven't really made a new content since last October. So it's like life, it's really time consuming for sure, because I'm more of a perfectionist with regards to how I want my content to look. So that means it makes me just spend so much time on trying to tweak, how it looks and that. So that's the reason why I think I need a bit more time to make new content. But yeah, I've got 5K subs on YouTube. It's I think like if you're in tech, if you want to grow your more of a social media and channels, right? Let's say it's good that you talk about the things that you have done, and then trying to teach people, because through that you're going to learn a lot about about your gaps in knowledge, and then you just work on them.
It's interesting you say about the perfectionist thing as well, by the way, because that was a huge thing for me, at least, because I stopped doing this for like a year, and I've only just recently started doing it. I think I'd done 6 episodes in like a month, and I was exhausted, and I was like, I can't do it. And then I have been speaking to so many people, and it was really interesting. And then I eventually was like, you know what, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it because I want to do it, and that's it. And so that sometimes they're not perfect, sometimes they have flaws. I'm certainly not the best. But I speak to really interesting people, and it's something that I kind of enjoy doing now. But it's a weird thing, isn't it? Content creation and stuff like that. It's always a little bit out of your comfort zone slightly. But I'll leave the links to your channel, if that's okay with you, below as well, so people can check it out. Even though it's October since you last done it, I'm sure you'll revisit it again, right? When you've got maybe some free time and stuff. Also leave your LinkedIn, so people feel free to just connect to Rajesh as well. And like I say, thank you very much, man. Episode 10 of Developers Unplugged, and what a great one. So thank you very much.
Cheers, Harry. Goodbye. Have a great one. Bye.